We are storytellers by nature, sharing with others what we experience, perceive, and believe of life, our joys, adventures, our losses. We tell ourselves stories as well. Some leave us trapped by false beliefs and self-doubt. But there are also stories of persisting, exploring, and rising above. Stories of uncovering the truth, enabling powerful transformation and triumph. These are those stories. These are your stories. Hello, folks. Welcome to And So It Is, Stories of Truth, Transformation, and Triumph. My name is Zoe DeMiro. My pronouns are he and him. As a spiritual counselor and religious science practitioner with the New Thought Media Network, and as a transformational coach as well, my ministry and my mission are to help people co-create their most authentic and most fulfilling life experience. As always, I'm honored to bring this show to you the first Saturday of each month. We're here at 11 a.m. Mountain Time, 10 a.m. Pacific. If this is your first time, great, wonderful, great to have you here. And if turning, welcome back. You know, each episode of this show will allow you to hear how people like you and like me, who have been held back by false and limiting beliefs, uncovered their truth, enabling them to transform their life experience and then quite literally triumph. Not in spite of, but because of their journey. You know, there are people you meet and you just instantly know you found not only a kindred spirit, but a person who radiates good feelings. That's Reverend Barbara Jean Schreiner-Trudel. She's the founder and spiritual director of Universal Joy Center in Toronto. That's Canada, in case you didn't know. She's a speaker, an author, a teacher, a host of 2 shows on the New Thought Media Network. The Joy Show, and that joy is just one you, as well as the show we all can use these days in particular, called And Now, the Good News. And in the words of others whose lives she has enriched, I want to just give you a couple of quick quotes here. Barbara has an extraordinary gift for weaving together universal truths in both Western and Eastern traditions. And lastly, this very succinct and profound statement. Barbara Schreiner-Trudel is a light to this world. Please join me, the glowing Reverend Barbara Jean Schreiner-Trudel.
Thank you, Zoe. Thank you so much. Such a kind introduction. I love it.
Well, what can I say? You know, this is what I see. This is what I hear. This is what I experience.
Oh, bless you. Bless you. It's wonderful to be here.
Okay, so I just want to get one thing straight, folks. I have been given permission to refer to this wonderful woman as Barbara Jean.
Yes.
Okay. Otherwise, it takes way too long.
It's a long name. And my pronouns are she, they.
All right. So, start us off. Where and when in your life are we going to begin this story?
Well, the major part of the story is when I was 27 years old. But I just want to go back for a second to a point in my life, a trauma that actually sort of set the stage for everything that was to come. And that was an accident I was in at a year old. Back in the olden days, we didn't worry about things like seatbelts or child restraint systems. And I was standing up on the front seat of my parents' car. I'm a year old, a little over a year. And my dad had to slam on the brakes. And as a result, I hit the dash with my head, of course. And so they took me to the doctor. Doctor couldn't find anything wrong. They went back 2 days later because my mom was really concerned because I could no longer walk and talk, which I had been doing since I was 9 months old.
Mm.
And the doctor sort of thought she had rocks in her head. You know, first time mom, what does she know? 1-year-olds don't walk and talk. And so she had to do some convincing to get him to believe that. They sent me to a neurologist, a specialist, and what he discovered was that I had a hairline fracture, which couldn't be seen on the regular x-ray, and that it had caused hemorrhaging. Uh, and as a result, they had to do surgery. I was in hospital for 1 month, and they didn't allow my parents to come see me.
Mm.
So therein lies that, oh no, I'm going to be abandoned again. That sense of abandonment that so many of us deal with. When I was 27 years old, which is the start of this particular part of my story, my marriage at the time was a bit rocky. I'd actually left the marriage, was staying with a girlfriend for a little while, and my mother-in-law called me up and invited me to attend a church service on a Sunday night. Now, I never went to church. I didn't go to church as a child. I didn't go to church as an adult. I believed in God or spirit, but I just didn't go to those places. I didn't find them all that interesting. But I decided to go with her that night because I thought maybe she would like me if I went with her. Whole reason I can tolerate an hour of this church thing, so my mother-in-law will like me. But something profound happened there, and what happened was when I walked into that church, I was in complete darkness. But when I walked out, it was like somebody had flipped a switch
Hmm.
and I was in the light. It was like I felt and knew the presence of God. And I was like absolutely dumbstruck by it. I didn't even know how to deal with what had happened. And as a result, I continued going to that church. In fact, I would go numerous times a week. I'd go every prayer service first thing in the morning, and then their regular service, and then their evening service, and then Wednesday night's prayer night, and Friday night's game night, and I'd be back there on Saturday for some workshop. It was like my life. I was so consumed. I had such a profound experience. I wanted to understand, and so I started reading the Bible, and I started asking Pastor, what about this? What about that? And it was quite a journey. Now, interestingly enough, I got back together with my husband and was really excited to make my marriage work. And that was in February when this happened, but in July, he left. Without telling me, he phoned me 3 days later and said, "Oh, by the way, I guess you figured out I'm not coming home." And it was a huge trauma for me. It was like really, really bad. And my kids were horrible. They became little monsters who did nothing but fight, scream, and yell, because, of course, their world had just been turned upside down as well.
Mhm.
And in August, I decided enough. I was done. There was nothing left for me. I just had no hope left. And so I decided that I was going to take my life. And I created a plan. I got my children looked after. And I'm getting ready to walk out the door, and my phone rings. And in those days, I would never leave a phone ringing. It's like, I got to answer this thing as soon as it rings. It's so important. But I hesitated a little bit, going, I just need to go. But finally, I picked up the phone. And the woman on the other end, I did not know her. She said to me, "You don't know me, but I sit behind you at church, 3 rows behind you." And so I'm thinking back, because church was one of those things, everybody had their position. And so I was like, okay, I know who this is now. I mean, I'd never spoken to her, but I knew who was calling me. And I said, "Oh, that's great. How are you today?" And trying to make nice. And then I'm going, "Well, I've got to go because I've got this plan. And I've got these things that I have to do." And she kept saying to me, "I don't know why I'm calling you, but I need to talk to you. And you've been on my mind for over an hour. I can't get you out of my mind. And I don't know what we need to talk about, but we need to talk." And she pushed and pushed and pushed. finally, after probably 10 or 15 minutes, I burst into tears and I said, my intention was to take my life today. We sat on the phone, we cried, it's bringing up emotion right now, actually.
Sure.
And it was such a profound moment because I thought, there's something looking out for me. There's a reason I'm here. There's a reason for me to stay. And so that was like this huge transformative experience. And I stayed at that church. It was a Nazarene church. And I stayed there for 18 months. And then after that time, I could no longer, I just wasn't getting the answers I was looking for. I knew God is love, but pastor was saying we're the only ones going to heaven. Everybody else is going to hell. And I went with the rabbi, and he goes, yeah, rabbi's going to hell because he doesn't believe in Jesus Christ. And I'm going, this doesn't, really good people who haven't heard about Jesus Christ. What about them? Yeah, they're going to hell too. And I'm like, this isn't sitting with what my experience was. My experience was God as love. And how could a loving God send people to hell? Like that just didn't make sense.
Yeah. Abandon them.
Yeah. Back to that abandonment idea that came up earlier. It really, it was really an interesting time for me because I ended up getting married again. Because, I got this abandonment thing going. So anytime somebody was nice to me, it's like hanging on for dear life. Oh, please, please, please see I'm okay. Why, but we get these patterns that run because of our childhood or whatever. We start looking for attention. And when somebody gives us attention, because we're in that low self-esteem, in that kind of needy place, we just glom onto it and hang on to it for dear life for fear it leaves. And what I ended up doing was getting married again to a violent man who was an alcoholic and drug addict. And that set me up for yet another fall. The interesting thing is, though, because of the spiritual awakening I'd had, I'm looking for something that would match my experience. And that's when I found the Centers for Spiritual Living. And I lived in Calgary at the time. And I started to attend the center there. I went a couple of times. And the man I married very quickly got us very busy on Sundays, so we couldn't go. And I was quite anxious to take the classes and everything, but there was no way he was having it. So I stayed with him for another year and a half, and then decided enough, enough of the beatings, enough of the telling me how to live, telling me he's going on vacation, and if I didn't have enough money to join him, well, then I could stay home. And he earned considerably more money than I did. He probably earned about 4 times what I did. So he could do things I was not able to do. So the abuse covered, everything: finances, sexuality, you name it. And I decided enough and I left. And that was a big step for me to walk out of that marriage. And when I did, I was really, really afraid because he started stalking me. And so it was like I couldn't go to the center anymore because he started going to the center.
Yeah.
So I couldn't go there. And it was probably about 8 months later, a friend of mine who had been a member of the center for quite a while turned around and said, Barbara, he hasn't been there in months. Come on back. So I did. And when I got back, I immediately started in classes, and with the intention of becoming a minister. I was really clear, because when I had that epiphany moment, I was called to ministry. But in the Nazarene church, girls can't do that. Right. It was only boys who could do that. And So that was kind of part of that journey. And then when I arrived at the center, all of a sudden it was like a light came on, and a friend of mine gave me the book You Can Heal Your Life by Louise Hay. That was the first book I read when I got into New Thought, and it was incredibly transformative. And when I started taking Science Mind 100, was what it was called at the time, I managed to find something that I could hang my hat on, something that made sense to me, something that was reasonable and intelligent and matched what I had felt in that epiphany moment. So it was hugely transformative, hugely transformative.
What would you say was really the primary thing that occurred to you with New Thought, with what you were learning in religious science?
The thing I learned, which is probably the thing that makes most people flee our centers, but caused me to stay, was personal responsibility. I was responsible for the life I was living. Now, that did not mean to say that I was responsible for my husband beating me up. That was not that, but I put myself there. I put myself there. So I've got to take responsibility for that. And when I took responsibility for everything in my life, and I do mean everything, I wasn't beating myself up. I was acknowledging a truth that I had created an experience of life based on my perception of reality, based on my understanding of the world at the time, based on my history, my traumas, and, whatever went on for me. My parents divorced when I was 11. Well, that was hugely humiliating to me. I'm like, because it just didn't happen back then, all those years ago. It was rare, and I was the only one in my school who was going through that. And I felt just so humiliated, which is kind of an interesting thing. And of course, abandonment again, popped up because of that. And so it's like the stories kept repeating. And when I found the center and realized that I was responsible for my attitude, that I was responsible for how I treated people, that I was responsible for the life I was living, I started to view things a little bit differently. And I started checking in with myself a little more regularly to see what was going on. And what I noticed was I kept telling my victim story. I would tell my victim story to everyone who would listen. Because, man, I was a victim. And I was so convinced of that and so tied to that. But then when I started accepting responsibility for myself, I started to realize that, wait a minute, this is my life, and I get to choose what I do and how I do it and who I do it with and when I do it. And I started to realize that there was so much more going on than I had any idea about. And it was time for me to create my life my way. And the first thing that I did was to become fully aware that I wanted to be a minister. Not that I wanted it. It was a calling. It was who I was. I needed to get there, period. And so started taking classes in the fall of that year. And my minister, we're chatting one day, and I said, I'm going to become a minister. And she went, yeah, right. I'm sure she'd heard it many times before. And I said, no, for sure I am. She said, well, nobody's going to hire you right out of school, so you better have a plan to start something. I said, absolutely. I'll start one in Toronto. And Toronto is the biggest city in Canada, and it didn't have Science Mind. And I'm like, how is that possible? There's no science mind there. It had been in Calgary for years. So I turned around. I said, well, I'm going to start a center in Toronto. And she just went, yeah, whatever. Like, that's going to happen. I'm sure lots of people had said they were going to do things and then never did. But I was really, really invested in that. And that vision never left. I studied for 5 years to become a minister. And at the end of the 5 years, I was still holding for Toronto, but something was happening that it wasn't occurring in that moment. Like, I couldn't seem to make it happen in that moment. And I'd already learned that forcing things to happen was not the way, that there was a willingness to kind of surrender into the process and to be there. So I was humming and hawing. I was out dancing with my girlfriends one night, and I get home and I check my answering machine, because we had those back then. And a friend of mine called and said, why didn't you candidate for the Vernon church? And I was like, I don't remember. So when I got up in the morning, I immediately phoned the Vernon Center and said, hey, I'd be interested in candidating. And they went, oh, that's great, because one of our people just pulled out. So we're going to have 3 people candidate, and we can have you there the first week. So I was excited. I'm like, great, that's where I'm going to go. So in November, I candidated, I spent the weekend there. And when I came home from that experience, I knew they were hiring me, even though there was 2 more weeks of other ministers going in and doing the same thing that I did. But I knew it was mine. I was so convinced. I gave notice where I lived that I would be moving out on December 15th. I gave notice where I worked. I was a real estate agent at the time. And I gave notice to the team that I worked with and said my last day of work would be December the 11th. And everybody's going like, are you out of your mind? Why don't you wait until December 13th when they vote and they tell you it's yours and then do this? I went, no, because they need a minister and I'm going to start on the 15th. And everybody was like, yeah, sure. So I absolutely believed that. I put all the plans in motion. I packed all my stuff up. I gave my car to my son and was ready to go. I went that morning and I'm waiting because BC was an hour behind us time-wise. So when they finished their service at noon, then they would vote. Pardon me. 1 sec. So I am sitting there, fingers crossed, toes crossed, ankles crossed, going, I think I'm right. The doubt sort of creeped in at the last minute. And then I got a phone call just shortly after 1, pardon me, that said, welcome, we chose you. And it was unanimous. And I was just blown over. I was so excited. And so I told everyone around me. I flew to Vernon on the Tuesday night, the 15th, did my very first service there on the Wednesday night, which was a candlelight service, December 16th, which happened to be my 42nd birthday. So the musicians sang Happy Birthday, Happy First Day was the song that they sang that night for that first service. And it was powerful. And what I didn't realize when I held the vision for Toronto, what I didn't realize was I needed a little bit of in-person, hands-on ministry stuff, because they don't teach you how to run a church. That part isn't covered real well. You have to kind of get in and do it. So I was in Vernon for 18 months and then moved to Toronto. And I came to Toronto, pardon me, with $40, 2 suitcases of summer clothes, my laptop, my CDs, and a couple of books. And then everything else was in storage, ready to be shipped. And I came here with a one-way plane ticket. to Hamilton, which is about an hour and a half sort of southwest of us. And I've never looked back. I've been here now coming up to 26 years. And I arrived at the end of July, and our first service was on September the 10th. And we had 35 people in attendance at that first service. So it was a very exciting adventure. And again, it was one that I knew I had to do. I'd gone to a conference in California in, I guess it was in February or March, I can't remember which. And in the first day I'm there, I'm journaling and it pops out on the page, time to go to Toronto. And so I came back to Vernon, gave notice that Sunday that I was leaving. They weren't very happy. Stayed until July and then moved here in July.
All right. I want to take a little break here.
Yeah.
Your voice a moment to chill. I know
Yes.
you've got a class. And folks, we'll be back in just a little bit with more from Barbara Jean. So just hang on.
Come expand your spiritual journey. Join us for Just the Talk. Sundays, 1 p.m. to 6 p.m. Mountain Time. Experience Unity Kitchener and Ottawa. Center for Spiritual Living Midtown. Center for Spiritual Living Denver. Unity of Garden Park. New Thought, Philadelphia. The Sunshine Cathedral. Unity of Savannah. And the Ohm Center for Spiritual Living. Come unleash your spiritual potential with New Thought Media Network.
And we are back. So we are talking with Barbara Jean today. And Barbara Jean, I just wanted to kind of recap a little bit from where we started. So it was interesting that when you were talking about one of the darkest periods in your life, when you had already planned on taking your life, that there was still that something that was holding you back. And it wasn't the phone call. It was that decision to answer the phone.
That was it.
You know, so there was always that something inside of you. And that really resonates with me. I had a very similar experience.
Did you? Yeah. Because that's the thing, is that at the time, I really believed that my pain defined me, that I would always feel that way, that I had to be strong for everyone else, and there was no safe place for my vulnerability, my feelings of abandonment, my fear of being left alone. All of that just seemed to, be me. And when I started to move away from that, like after that woman called me, I started to realize that there's something about me that the universe needed at that time, and obviously needs now because I'm still here.
Yes.
It's like, we journey along, and, who knows how long we're going to be here, but, we're here. And if we're here, there's something for us to do. There's something within us that we're here to bring to the world. Every one of us has this unique little something that is ours to share, and we have to wake up to it. I didn't believe there was anything in me of value. I've been just shown through my life what a pain in the ass I was. That's the truth. And it that that lived with me. One of the things that I think I recall, but I'm not, of course not positive, when I was a year old and my parents came to pick me up from the hospital, finally, I was there for a month. And when they came to get me, I have this memory, I think, could be something I fabricated, but that when my dad came into the room, he looked at me and looked back at the doctor and said, "That's not my daughter."
Yeah.
And the reason he would have said that is that no one prepared them for the fact that I would be all bruised, that my head was shaved, that, I had scar on my head. Like, there wasn't prep for that. Back all these years ago, this is 68 years ago now, brain surgery was still really new. And no one knew, what the impact would be long term. But somehow I have this idea that my dad, who I was closest to, between my parents, I was closest to my dad. I absolutely knew he loved me. But I have this memory of him just not recognizing me as what happened. But that's not how I took it as a small child.
Mm-hmm.
It was, I'm ugly, I'm deformed, I'm unrecognizable, I'm not valuable. Like, there was a whole bunch of stuff that, I'm giving words to now, but I'm sure at the time there were no words. A 1-year-old doesn't have a great long vocabulary, that's for sure. But there was the feelings of not enough, not good enough. And so that carried me through all the years of my life. And it's been through this teaching of the science of mind that I've been able to sort of dismantle a lot of what happened to me and begin to look at all of it as a gift, because it brought me to now. I am the woman I am today because of the life I lived, not in spite of it, but because of it. And so I just want to remember that everything that happened brought me here to this moment. And so I can call it bad and wrong if I want. But the truth is, it made me who I am, and I like me now. I didn't like me much back then, but I do now. I love and appreciate me and my skills and talents and whatever. I'm totally present with that now, and I see that I do have something to share. I do have a story to tell, and I think most of us do have a story to tell. It's just, how do we tell it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. There's a phrase that we hear all the time in New Thought: "There's nothing to be healed, only to be revealed."
Revealed. I agree.
And your story purely rests so well on that. I mean, you talked about feeling like a victim. Well, you weren't a victim as much as you were victimized.
Exactly.
So it's a matter of, it's a huge perspective change.
Yeah.
And when you were talking about how people can either gravitate towards or be repelled by the idea of being responsible for everything in our lives.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that I learned that made a big difference for me and made that much more palatable was responsible does not mean obligated. Responsible means able to respond.
Yes. Big difference.
Huge difference.
Huge difference. Every now and again, I'll hear somebody say, "Oh, you mean I'm to blame because, my husband hit me, or I'm to blame because I have cancer?" No. That's not it at all. It's how I respond to life. I am responsible for my response. And when we get that, it's like so different. And then we can relax into a new way of being in the world, and we can actually be a bit of a change maker in the world by assisting others in seeing their potential as well. One of my favorite things to do is to tell people how much I love them. Doesn't matter if I know them or not. That's neither here nor there. But there's that idea, because what we teach is oneness. And if there's only one thing going on, then we're all connected. And if we're all connected, if I love me, I got to love you.
Mm-hmm.
But when you say that to people, and I have a great response with it, because people tend to immediately smile, and they kind of melt, in that moment, and accept it as a gift without any weird expectation or anything like that. It's just a warm feeling. I was walking through a park, and there was a gentleman reading the book, The Godfather, which of course came out a long time ago. Well, I read it as a teenager when it first came out, before the movies came out.
Mm-hmm.
And so this guy's reading it, and I looked at him and went, "Oh, great book," and kept walking. And as I'm going past him, he goes, "Yeah," he said, "Did you like it?" And I said, "Oh yeah, it was a great book." I said, "I read it when I was a teenager, when it first came out." And he goes, "There's no way that you could have read this as a teenager. That was like 50 years ago." And I looked at him and I went, "I love you." And he looks back at me with this big smile. "I love you too." And I continued walking. My girlfriend that I was with at the time was, I think, looking at me a little bit sideways, like, "You can't talk to strange men like that." There's nothing strange about him. I just didn't know him yet. That's all. And I've had that experience a number of times, where I will just tell people, how beautiful they are, how inviting they seem, or I don't know. I just tell people good stuff about them, because sometimes people don't realize, because I know I didn't think I had any value or worth. And so when I look at people around me, I want them to know that they are unique and special, just like every other person on the planet.
Mm-hmm.
And sharing that love is the best way I can do that. And it's from my journey of hating myself, because I truly did, and coming around to that idea that I was more than a story I was told about me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's really important, that the story that was told about you, that you believed. The reality of it is, from what I'm hearing, it's not that you didn't like or love yourself. You didn't like or love the self that you believed was you.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Then once you understood the truth of who you were, then love could flow.
Then it was easy. And it's fascinating to me. I have 4 children. The first was born when I was 16 years old, so I was pretty young. And the last one was born when I was 48 years old, which is kind of up there for having a baby. But what's interesting with those 4 children is all of them tell me everything. Pretty much everything. They probably don't tell me everything, but they're very comfortable coming and telling me stuff. And I'm really grateful for that. But every now and again, they tell me something that I kind of gulp and go, "Wow, good for you. That's they've done something, that maybe they shouldn't have done or whatever." But they always tell me. And I'm so grateful that they feel safe with me, that they're not worried about saying, "Mom, I did this or I did that, or this is going on or that's going on." They're perfectly comfortable to tell me that. And I think the reason is that I don't get mad at them for making a mistake. I mean, there isn't one of them who's made the number of mistakes I have. So how could I possibly get mad at them? I sometimes wonder how I got to be this age, because I led such a questionable existence there for a while. But ultimately, I really believe that we're here for a reason. And until we've satisfied that, we're going to be here.
Okay, so we've gone from this inability to believe in who you were because there was no reason to believe in that, to discovering that not only is there a lot to you, but there's a lot for you and a lot that you can bring to the world. So now you
Yes.
are a new minister.
Mm-hmm.
Take us from there.
When I started in ministry, which was in December of 1998, I felt like I found myself. I felt like this is what I was born to do. And I was really surprised about it in the beginning because, you know, people would get mad at me. The board would get ticked off at me doing certain things, or people would get upset because I said something that they didn't like. And I was learning this whole new thing of what it means to be a minister. And I'm going, whoa, this is kind of challenging. And I remember I had been, in the center for about 6 months. And, that's sort of when the honeymoon period ends and truth gets revealed. And man, I felt like I was a fish out of water, that I was really going to die in this place. And so I contacted the Reverend Dr. James Golden, who was, I think at the time he may have even been the head of RSI. But I phoned him up, or maybe we were at a conference together, and I had a chat with him, and I said, I don't know what to do. They're mad at me for things that I haven't said or done, and I'm really feeling, a little bit lost here, and I don't know how to explain to them. And he went, whoa, 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 just stop right there. He says, you got nothing to explain because this isn't about you. And I was like, pardon me? And he was like, no, he says, what they're projecting is about them. It's not about you. And you need to just listen. So I started to do that. When somebody would bring me their big complaint about I did this, that, or the other thing, I would just say, tell me more about that. That's really interesting. Can you expand that a little bit? And I would get them talking more and more and more. And what would happen most of the time, was they would soon discover that it had nothing to do with me and everything to do with their own path and journey. And so it became a really powerful thing. And what was interesting, when I went back, we had a board meeting that Sunday after I talked to Dr. Golden. And at that meeting, one of the board members started going off, and the board secretary stood up and said, no, that doesn't belong here. If you have a personal beef with the minister, then you take it outside. You do it at another time, not during our board meeting. That's not board business. And the person got up and left, never came back. The president and the vice president both left, and everybody else stayed, and we moved forward with great growth and expansion after that. And then one of those board members came back 6 months later and apologized to me, saying, this wasn't about you. I realize that now. And so it was like Dr. James just absolutely woke me up to do not defend yourself. You don't need to. You don't need to defend yourself. Defense is offense. And the minute you start doing that, people fight back. But if you just give them space and listen, they'll just keep talking. And that was a profound lesson in the beginning of my ministry, and it served me well. But, ministry has been a challenge. Right now, it's better than ever. And I think, like most things in life, it does that, right? It's the ebb and flow of everything in life. But right now, things are really, really good. And so for that, I'm really excited and delighted to be doing what I do. I love what I do. And I can't imagine ever retiring. Who knows? It might happen, but I don't know. It doesn't seem to be in the near future for me anyway. Let's just put it that way.
Well, the energy that you bring to what you do, all that you do, from all that I have seen and understood, is magnificent.
Bless your heart.
You know, in New York and in parts of the southern U.S., when people say "bless your heart," it can carry two different meanings.
It really does.
There's the, oh, bless your heart.
My husband says that to me. I'll say to him, "Oh, honey, thank you so much." And he'll go, "Oh, that right up there with the South when they say, bless your heart." But I actually mean it when I talk about you. That's right. It does have two connotations depending on how you're bringing it. Yeah.
So when I look at the transformations in your life, it's not a transformation. It sounds like there have been many transformations.
Many. Yeah, many small, brave steps to get to where I am now. And, the greatest gift was taking science mind classes and beginning to use, key here, use the tools. So many people will take a class and then go away and take another class and go away and take another one, but not change anything they're doing. And we have to change what we're doing so that we can reveal that essence of us, that part of us that has been kind of pushing at the door to, come on, open up, let me in. Let me begin to express who I am. And it's powerful when that happens. I love when I see people overcome something and really find their voice. It just makes me truly, truly delighted.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, I just wanted to mention for people who are watching, if they're not familiar with some of the terms that we've been using, when we speak of science of mind or religious science, we're speaking of aspects of new thought, which is rooted in ancient teachings. And
Yes.
I love the way one person explained it to me one time. He said, well, the new thought is the new thought that you have based on your understanding.
Exactly. Yeah. That's the new thought. And it's powerful. It's really powerful. And the world right now, I keep hearing people talk about how bad the world is right now, as if that's never happened before. And it just makes me giggle because I'm going, okay, there was the Depression, World Wars I and II, all the wars that have been going on around the world since then, all of those. And, just all the continuous, we as human beings are kind of caught up in drama. We kind of like it, I think. It's why we'll chase an ambulance or, stop at an accident and, gawk for a while. And, like we're really caught up in that drama. And what this teaching has done for me is calmed my mind a little bit, because I went to university to become a journalist. Well, journalists, as a rule, share bad news. If it bleeds, it leads. And I decided when I found new thought, I couldn't do that. So I completed my education, but never used it because it was just negative. And I couldn't bring myself to do that, not with the new understanding that I had. I knew that each and every one of us has value. Each and every one of us has some kind of a gift. And if we're in communication with each other, then we are sharing with each other something that matters to our awakened self. And it doesn't matter who it is. Every time you walk by a street person, someone who is without a home, do you pass judgment? Or do you smile and say good morning and have a conversation?
Mm-hmm.
It's another human being. They deserve your respect. They deserve your attention. Doesn't matter if you give them money or not. You don't have to do that, but you can be kind. And I taught that to my daughter. My youngest daughter was with me one day when we went into a drugstore, and standing outside was a gentleman who was asking for money or food or whatever. And we went in and we bought, a bunch of food and a big bottle of water and stuff for him. And when we brought it out and gave it to him, he was beside himself. He couldn't believe we did that. And he looked at me and he grabbed me and gave me the biggest hug. And he said, "Thank you so much. So many people just walk past me and ignore me." And then he looks at my daughter, who was 14 at the time. And all of a sudden he goes, realizing it might be okay to give her a hug, he grabs her and gives her a big hug. And he goes, "Come here, you little shit." And he gives her a big hug. And when we got in the car, my daughter was just so grateful. She said, "Mom, that is the best experience ever. I'm so grateful we bought that stuff for him. Like, that was wonderful." And I thought, we say a lot of things to our children, and some of it they hear, but I think most often they hear, "Mwah, mwah, mwah." But when you show them something, it lands. So we need to be the example. We need to pay attention to what we're doing and how we're doing it, knowing that everything that we do brings with it some sort of experience. There's always cause and effect. So what are we putting out?
And with that in mind, when you're talking about having studied journalism and then not really moving forward with it, I will challenge that. You are the host of 2 shows that I'd like you to talk about for a moment.
Yeah. Well, I've just recently taken over And Now the Good News, which airs every Friday night at 5 o'clock Mountain, 7 o'clock Eastern. And it's so fun because we're telling good news stories, and I love good news stories. In fact, I think we had one show where I just kept crying through it. I couldn't stop it. It's like, oh my goodness, it's such a great story. Anyway, it was kind of funny, a little embarrassing, but it was authentic. It was, these stories were touching my heart in such a deep way. And so I love doing that show. It's so fun. And then I started another show a few years back called The Joy Show, and joy being meaning just one you. And if there's just one you, well, how great is that? So I would interview people, or sometimes I would do shows by myself and just talk about different principles of science mind. And doing that show for all these years has been one of the greatest joys for me. I love interviewing people, and I love hearing their stories and how they got to where they are, and what they bring, and how interesting each person is. And so I love doing that show. And anybody wants to be on the show, please send me an email. RevBarbara@Rogers.com. I will answer. And I just love, and it doesn't matter who you are. I mean, every one of us has a story of some sort or another. And sometimes we think our story isn't very interesting, but when we break it down and share it with somebody else, they might find it very interesting. So it's time to, really show up that way. A show I did years ago when I was in Calgary, I did it for Rogers, was called Women in Crisis. And it was a live phone-in show that focused on women who were being abused, domestic violence. And in that show, I would bring on different authority figures from within the industry, people who ran shelters or were therapists or whatever for people. And so we were doing a lot of that. And the show was really good. In fact, the first year, they actually put it up for award for Best New Show. We didn't win it, but it was really nice to be thought of that way. So yeah, it only ran for 1 year because I got too busy with my ministerial studies to continue it. But it was a great show and it was fun to do. And I did it at 11 o'clock on Thursday morning because I figured women would be home alone at that point and they'd be able to call it if they needed. So that was the strategy for that. And yeah, I was excited. So I guess, yeah, I am doing some stuff with my education.
And I understand that you have a book that'll be coming out perhaps in May.
Yes, yes. So the book is called Return to Joy, 120 Days of Transformation. And it is a journal. It is a doing book rather than a reading book. And it allows you to practice every day, to take time to think about what you're doing, to do. I put a lot of spiritual mind treatments in there, or affirmative prayer, if you don't know what treatment is. And those are in there as well. Place to journal at the end of each day and some practices to do through the day that will help you to maintain and to arrive at that place of joy. The reason I changed the name of our center from Center for Spiritual Living to the Universal Joy Center is my life has become joyful as a result of this teaching. And so I thought that could be available to everybody. So I decided I would name the church, the center, excuse me, name the center exactly as I saw it, a place where you can discover your uniqueness, your value, and become very joyful in your life experience. That was my plan.
That's exquisite. Well, we could go on for days, but and I certainly want to thank you for your candor and for your clarity. Any final words you'd like to share?
Yeah, of course. Always got one more word, the joy of being a minister. So I think my greatest triumph is that I no longer see myself as broken. I see myself as someone who walked through darkness and found light. And now I carry a lantern for others. So pain didn't end my story. It became the doorway to it. And yeah, that's me. I walked the path and here it is.
Beautiful. Thank you so very, very much.
Thank you, Zoe. It was great to be here.
And folks, as I've said before, this is your show. So if you'd like to be a guest, share your journey, your transformation. There is no transformation too small. Right. Please reach out to me here at zodemiro@gmail.com. I'd be more than happy to hear what's going on in your life and how you have managed to go from false and limiting beliefs to the truth in your transformation and your triumph. All right. I wish you all a magnificent, magnificent day. Know that you are a co-creator of your life experience. You might not be able to choose what happens in your life, but you do get to choose what happens in your experience of life.
Yes.
And as I have said so many times, you are loved, and oh my goodness, you are love. All right, folks, take care, be well. Once again, thank you so much, Barbara.
My pleasure. Thank you.
All right, be well, folks.